From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. Happy to be here on a getaway day at ForceCenter.
That is right. This is our breaking news show, which is going to be a little bit shorter than sometimes because, hey, only so much news has broken. But also, I will take full responsibility. I'm doing a horrible thing in leaving. I'm going on a family trip to Norway. I will be calling in from a hotel room as we discuss the final episode of Acolyte. Very excited for that. But after this episode wraps, I got to get on a jet plane that will hopefully keep all of its wheels on as it flies through the air. Lots of things to be anxious about these days. Anyway.
Yes. I saw that footage right after I had landed in Burbank the other week, and I was like, okay. I conquered my fear of flying. It might be back.
Yep. And all the articles I saw about the wheels falling off, like, well, they landed safely. Like, could you share some details of how?
It's all in the details.
They did. Okay. Made some cool sparks on the runway. Maybe that'll happen to us. Anyway,
There you go.
We want to let you know, as always, that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We are continuing to recommend The Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. It is a celebration of the High Republic era lately, with The Acolyte being a show that takes place at the tail end of the High Republic. The Light of the Jedi is the book where the adventure began, and Ken and I are both big fans of this book. So if you're curious, just want to check out one book, you can really just listen to this one book, and it helps us out a ton if you get it through Audible, through this link, audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. That's it for that, Ken.
That's it for that. Now, an ask. We have a multi-layered, not a multi-level marketing scheme. We have a multi-layered ask here today. Our goal on YouTube for a bit here has been trying to get 10,000 subs before the end of the Acolyte. We have 2 days to get about 700 subs. Is it possible? Yes, it is. Do or do not. There's no try. The point is you do it, and then you either don't or you do, and you move forward with that. Or we can also set another goal. We got a little sub goal here right now. We, in addition to covering Acolyte's series or season finale, I should say, hopefully, we're also going to be appearing on Star Wars Explained with Alex and Molly, doing their live breakdown later in the day. For me, for you, it might be a little later in the evening out there in Norway, but we'd love to maybe get 9,500 subs before the end of that show. Can you help us do that? Subscribe here, hit that notification bell, and all those things if you're watching on YouTube. For those on the podcast side, we always appreciate you having our voices in your ears.
Yes, and things are going well on the podcast side as well. So that's why we're constantly talking about YouTube. Because things are fine over there in podcast world. We got our podcast listeners who are like, thanks for your faces, but I like podcasts. They fit my life better. And thank you to everyone who continues to listen in the classic way. Yeah, we've been going up about 100 subscribers a week pretty solidly. So we're at about 9,300. So maybe we can get up to 700 in the next 2 days. It's possible. Yoda would ask us to believe in ourselves. I like that point, Ken. So thank you to everybody who's joined us.
We could take care of that by saying something really inflammatory and just putting it out there, and then maybe a lot of hate follows. We could. There's a way to, but we're choosing the path of the Jedi here as we try to grow in the dark side cave called the internet.
Yep. I'm trying to think of if we wanted to be sort of like, not inflammatory, but the shocking. Everybody's got to click on this. Like maybe I would get one of the Yord Funko Pops and do like a circle around the neck, and like the Funko Pop proves he survived.
Yes.
A head can bobble and still be attached. Look, the Funko Pop proves it. Anyway. On that cheery note, sorry, Yord Horde, we will move into the fun of Star Wars and life adventures. We always like to get caught up on our Tuesday show. Ken, what did you have going on for life adventures, and did Star Wars find its way into them this week?
This past week, it was a little weird, huh? A little weird in the news world, in the world overall. So that happened, and we're all processing that in our own way, and I'll leave that on the shelf for now. But in the middle of that, I had a bunch of comedy shows, and I had a great time explaining. A lot of us in the green room last night were doing and I want to say this was in a very positive not a measuring contest kind of way, but a very positive. What's your podcast? Do you have a podcast? How many do you have? And I was the only one who had a Star Wars podcast there, and I was kind of explaining ForceCenter, what you, me, and Jennifer do here, and a lot of people had no idea Star Wars podcasts do well. A lot of people, it's very refreshing to be, because I was like, oh, here we go. I'm gonna have to get that. What do you think about the sequels, the prequels, and all that kind of stuff? And no, it wasn't the case. Everyone was just like, "Oh, awesome! Yeah, I didn't know that you could do a Star Wars podcast." And for once, it felt nice just to be like, "Yeah, I didn't either, but here we are."
Oh, that's so good. That's so lovely that it was a nice time.
Yeah.
I did not have a lot of adventures outside of just working this week. The large news event of the weekend, in fact, was an interruption to a Star Wars adventure. Been trying to finish Path of Vengeance by Kevin Scott, the High Republic book that I'm reading and enjoying, just running into time constraints. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. I can sit on the couch and read for an hour or two. You know what? I'll just check social media. Oh, okay. Some stuff to pay attention to in the world. Sorry to that book. But you know what? Star Wars always still does find me, Ken. Because I was kind of thinking, like, I don't think I had any Star Wars adventures other than normal things of looking at action figures, whatever, thinking about the shows, all that. And then I realized Star Wars does still find you in all these little small ways in this very amazing, innocent, fun cultural event that's going on of Star Wars Oreos has been this little blessing in my life of just about every meal, not healthy. My wife and I opened we got that box that has a little 2-pack packages.
Yep.
So we're able to open again and again and just be like, okay, I really need some blue cream. I really need the light side. Can I get some blue cream today? And last night, busy, packing, stressed, opened it up. Both my wife and I opened up our packages and got blue cream. And I, in fact, got a Luke and a Leia. And I ate them both, and it gave me great peace.
Yes, they have ascended to another plane. But that's amazing. No, we've in this house have gone with the big packages a couple times, and it's been red both times. Which, no, take it back. That's right. No, we got blue, and Grace was very upset. She wanted the red, so we got the red. It's balance in the house. We're leaving town. My wife bought more. I was like, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun.
And she's like, these will last. I'm like, yes, you're right. If there was a zombie apocalypse, you could be eating these Oreos 15 years later with no health concerns. Indeed. Anyway, we're going to segue from Oreos and the zombie apocalypse to Star Wars news. There was not a ton of news. There was another big sort of interview with Leslie Headland that had a lot of great insights in details about previous episodes of Acolyte, but it did also have some stuff that was sort of like, I don't know, for me, that's on the edge of kind of confirming or denying some stuff. And you and I had a big talk last week about some of those interviews. So we kind of thought, hey, instead of having a news show that is only relevant for, 16 hours before the final episode of the Acolyte drops or whatever it is, that we tackle this other news. Any other thoughts on that before we get into this Shawn Levy news?
Yeah, I agree. I didn't want to keep coming off too negative or grumpy about it because I do love the interviews and I love the insights. And I did decide to poke through one of them and had what I would call a minor spoiler. It's just kind of not even like a thing. It was just like a thing around a thing. And you're just like, the episode's a couple days away. Like it's almost here. You could put them out. I need to choose not to engage right now. But I don't want to keep beating that dead horse in my own soul.
Yeah, I read them and I enjoyed them, but I feel like, I'm more anxious to engage with the episode and everybody's reaction to it. So maybe there's some tidbits in there that we'll go back to revisit, or I'm sure there'll be another interview after the fact and we can cover that. But speaking of things that may or may not happen, let's talk about the Star Wars news from this weekend from director Shawn Levy. This is a quote that I pulled from coverage of this on Star Wars Newsnet. Here's what they had to say. On the red carpet for Deadpool and Wolverine, Shawn Levy, is it Levy or Levy? I forgot to Google.
I don't. Good question.
Yes.
He's from Canada too, so I'm just going to, he's not related to Eugene Levy, but I think I've heard Levy in the past.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
apologies, and please be gentle in the YouTube comments. Apologies that I did not confirm the pronunciation of Sean's name. You know what? We're just going to be on first name basis for this
Yeah,
episode.
our
You
buddy
know,
Sean.
our buddy Sean. Sean the director. Sean the director confirmed that Jonathan Tropper, or Troper, but Tropper, is writing his Star Wars movie. Let me say that again. Sean the director confirmed that Jonathan the writer is writing his Star Wars movie. This is as far as Sean can go with revelations about what they have in mind, but added that they have an exciting idea. Here's a quote from Sean the director. I'm happy that's one secret I don't have to keep keeping. Jonathan is writing my Star Wars film. We did the Adam Project together, and we have an idea that is really exciting to us and exciting to Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni. One never knows if development reaches the starting gate, but my hope is that it will. So we're going to discuss that quote. But Jason Tropper is a screenwriter whose film credits include several films that, to be honest, I've personally never seen. This Is Where I Leave You, Kodachrome, Irreplaceable You, and the Adam Project with Sean as well. And to review, if anybody isn't familiar with Shawn the director, he directed, obviously, the up-and-coming one and only MCU film this year, Deadpool and Wolverine, which I will definitely see and I'm excited for. Other credits include the Night at the Museum franchise, Date Night, Free Guy, The Adam Project, and many more films that I also haven't had a chance to see, even though some of them have been on my list of movies to see for over a decade, like Date Night. Anyway, Ken, this comment from Sean is very honest that the film is in development, being discussed, but there are no guarantees that this film is happening. How do you feel about that, and how do you feel about the way that the director is talking about it on the red carpet?
I actually really like it. I think I have no ill will towards this wonderful, talented director, Sean, the director, Shawn Levy. I like him. I've seen a lot of his stuff. I forgot he did Date Night. I enjoyed that film. Jonathan Tropper, I just realized right now as you're speaking, Joseph, wrote one of my favorite novels of all time.
Really?
Called Plan B. Came out in 2000. It is a story of people turning 30 and not knowing how to deal with it. And I loved that book in 2000. Man, I wish I was back in 2000 worrying about 30. But it's I totally forgot. That's him. It's him. And he went into screenwriting and stuff. He's got a lot of novels out there. Great book. So excited to have him involved. But in terms of your direct question here, I don't have any ill will towards Sean, but I didn't like the way his movie kind of had came out, where I felt there was back in the day a little bit of hey, I'm working on this thing, wouldn't it be great, and kind of a social media push behind it to make it happen, which is smart. But I just felt it turned something that was a rumor, an idea, a kernel of an idea into fact inside the Star Wars fandom, that he is making a Star Wars film, and when is it going to come out, and this, all that stuff, where it was at best at the time maybe in talks or in development. So this was a great answer to me. And again, I'm really stressed. I don't have will towards anyone who works the system right now. Okay, I don't have a problem with it. If you go viral for sexually explicit advice on and then you get $20,000 to appear at a concert in a reality series, take the deal. Okay, that's what's going on in the world right now. Work the system. But I appreciate that it's honest and it's open, and it's like we're down the path a bit, but no guarantees, and that's what I'd like to focus on when we're having discussions on the news, Star Wars news.
Yeah, I think I think that the world of film marketing and getting jobs in films has just changed entirely. Where I think for me it used to be like, well, once you reach a threshold of success, like Sean's just a huge success. I think I used to have a perception of like, well, you make deals and you have people and that, but like we're all influencers now. Is that everybody is kind of making a social media internet audience pitch to advance their career, and that's a very interesting thing that I've been discovering as I work on trying to produce this indie film of my own. That everybody says at every level, you are required to do your own marketing in a way that you didn't used to before the advent of full-on social media. So yeah, nothing against him being like, I'm so excited I have this in development. Wouldn't it be awesome? all my fans would be excited for it. You should get excited because this is on the table. Get excited. So I don't really have a problem with anything that he has particularly said or done. But since we do live in a headline only culture where people see just the headline or they see just a friend on social media paraphrasing the headline, this film has definitely been one where people at parties have said, "Hey, when's his movie coming out?" And be like, "Well, quite possibly never, because it's never been announced by Lucasfilm." And I think there's, unlike some things that happen on social media, I don't think there's any malice. I think it's just people who love his work hear a headline or a paraphrasing of a headline and think it's a for sure. And I don't want those people to feel bad. To me, what's happening and what he's being extremely honest about, saying, never know if one never knows if development reaches the starting gate. The announcement isn't, I have a job as the assistant manager at Target. The announcement is, I'm applying for a job as the assistant manager at Target, and I have buckets of retail experience, and I would be a great hire, and there's a very good chance I'll get this job, but I am applying for the job, not I have the job. And I think that is the huge difference between, the idea of it's in development versus Lucasfilm announced we intend to make this film.
Yeah. He's maybe had one of those group interviews, like on a Saturday. Come down, bring your application, turn it in, and we'll see what's going on. And I want to iterate again. I get what he did before, and I think he should be excited now. And it's intriguing. That's why we're going to talk about the idea. But that Star Wars news cycle over the last few years is just got a little, exhausting as always, but just that like this, if this didn't happen, this would be another strike against Lucasfilm for not making a movie. And it's like there's probably 5 of these projects in some sort of development right now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I mean, he says that, Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni are excited about it. If he's talking to them, it is a high likelihood he is in the Disney family. We'll see how if Deadpool and Wolverine knocks it out of the park. I think that makes a big difference to this film. So it is definitely a possibility, but it is in development, as the director himself acknowledges in that red carpet quote. But enough of the business. Let's talk about the fun of it, of what it could be about should it materialize. So both Shawn and Jonathan's resumes have a history of sort of mixing action and adventure with comedy and whimsy and family drama. How do you feel about focusing on those ingredients in a Star Wars movie? And particularly one that if it gets the green light the day after Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine premieres, still probably wouldn't see this film until maybe 2030,
maybe,
2030. So how do you feel about those ingredients in general? And can you even imagine where the audience or culture will be at by the time this film would come out?
That's a great question, because I am looking at his movies now, and I've seen a few of them. I actually enjoyed the first Night at the Museum. I didn't see Real Steel back in 2011, but I know a lot of people love that film. Consider it kind of an underrated Hugh Jackman gem. But a lot of his movies have the vibe of like the early 2000s, like still DVD, Blu-ray era rom-com or comedy that just kind of goes in the theater, makes some money, and then goes to disc and makes a lot more money. And that vibe, and your question of where we're going to be in 6 years, we might be back to that. We might be far away from that. But the ingredients that you just laid down on the table, I think, are perfect for Star Wars. I know he had somewhat involvement in Stranger Things too, right? So that has that Star Wars vibe that I'm actually kind of excited. And he's seems to have a good spirit about it in his interviews. Again, he's super excited. So all of this kind of little whimsy, fantastic imagination based kind of adventures. The Night at the Museum series kind of scratches that itch for me. I think there's something there's a better mix of him and Star Wars than I thought when this first kind of was announced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and with full acknowledgement that I have not seen any of these films, but they've been in the cultural osmosis field, and I read up on a couple of them. I think one of the things that really strikes me about his oeuvre is that a lot of his films have that sense of kind of the every person
Mm-hmm.
who is caught up in an epic adventure, and getting a little contrast from that.
Yeah.
Date Night and Free Guy both seem to have that sort of that element. Night at the Museum does have that sort of Spielbergian wonder quality of like,
Mm-hmm.
what if the thing you dreamed of as a kid was real? Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be thrilling? So I think all those things are great, and I think they are kind of some energy and some mood that we haven't had a ton of in Star Wars
Right.
lately. I've been on about we've had a lot of characters who are a little bit more stoic. We've had a lot of characters who are really
Mm-hmm.
processing trauma. So I feel like right now, I think Star Wars could use an emphasis on the ingredients of action, adventure, comedy, whimsy, an everyday person
Mm-hmm.
swept up in a huge adventure and need to prove themselves. I think a really whiz bang adventure sounds absolutely great. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my questions about it is, I wonder how much Skeleton Crew is going to fill that gap.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
what a film might, what my desires for a Star Wars story might be like after Skeleton Crew, because I think Skeleton Crew is explicitly leaning into that sort of Spielbergian wonder,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of everyday people, just kids caught up in, you know, the
Grand.
the uh,
Yeah.
the actions and the tragedies and the tensions of the galaxy. But I
Mm.
would be very curious to see by the time this film came out, of like, would would we be ready to, in the theaters, be back to a one-off
Yeah.
adventure, a one-off whiz-bang adventure? Um, does it need to be high galactic stakes? Does it need to be tied to larger canon? Does it need to move a big picture story forward? Or will audiences get back to, you know what? I just want to have a good time at the theater, and walk out, pretending I have a lightsaber, or wanting to
Mm-hmm.
put a baseball card in my
Mm-hmm.
back tire and make a cool motor noise, like
Yes.
that
Yes.
old school blockbuster feel of, I just want to have a good time, and I don't need it to change my life, and I don't need it to change the entire trajectory of Star Wars.
Mm.
Are we going to get back to that place, or is that a time that has passed? How do
Mm.
you feel about that?
It's yeah. I was kind of, as you're talking, thinking like he could end up making not Solo 2, but he could make the Solo of the next generation of Star Wars films, which,
Mm-hmm.
depending on your point of view, is either yay or, oh, I didn't like that, because I myself am missing that kind of vibe, not from Star Wars, but just kind of from life, of just, let me just sit
Mm-hmm.
down, turn on this, and have some swashbuckling whiz bang adventure, as you say, and we like to say around here. And I think, just based on resume, and we don't ever want to pigeonhole a creator into
Mm-hmm.
this. He could be doing the Old Republic, probably not, but everything that you're describing, everything, and that question of where will we be in 6 years after potentially 3 more Star Wars films, some being very epic, some having galaxy wide stakes, it might be the right time. The world might just want a little breath of Star Wars fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
and this could end up working out that way. Again, very early in the game here, I know, but all the ingredients kind of add up to that kind of vibe.
Yeah, in 2030 is just a random number I picked to
Right.
illustrate feeling far away, because as we know, even with announced films,
Mm-hmm.
things can change.
Yeah.
We've talked about the slate of announced films, but I feel like obviously The Mandalorian and Grogu is happening. It's
Yeah.
got a date in 2026. I think the Rey movie in New Jedi Order movie will happen. I think the Filoni movie will happen. I think it kind of has to happen at this point. They've committed
Yeah.
to
They're there. They're
finishing that story. Thrawn's got to go somewhere. uh, Maybe that would end up being turned back into a Disney Plus series. Maybe. I think James Mangold's the one for me that, like, yeah, I could see that getting bumped if something else
there.
comes along. If tides turn in Hollywood with audiences' tastes,
Yeah. Mm.
maybe suddenly this film is coming out in 2028, or maybe this film is coming out in 2036. One
Yeah.
never knows with this slate.
Yeah, especially if the development process goes smooth and you got
Mhm.
a writing partner on board that you work with a lot, and everything, and they're excited, you're excited, we're all excited. Let's do it. Yeah, I could see it speeding up.
There have been some things with the Disney era of Star Wars 2 where a director is hot. and
Mm-hmm.
everybody loves them. And then they put out something that, regardless of whatever the audience thinks of it, it stumbles at the box office or it stumbles
Mm-hmm.
in audience reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the audiences do seem to turn on a dime. They're like, "Woo, boo!" From woo to boo,
I'm Woo-da-boo.
from woo to boo in one
Mm,
release.
mm,
Also makes me feel like if Deadpool and Wolverine just crushes, maybe
yeah.
there is some foot on the gas. Let's make this Sean's next project before we
Yeah.
can go from woo to boo on his next project.
Yeah, it's so true. And Star Wars, they're not the only ones, but Star Wars in a more high profile way has been suffered for the woo to boo syndrome. There,
Yeah,
it's kind of insane. Yeah,
I
when
can
you
think
think
of at
about it,
least 3 woo to boos.
a lot of
Uh,
woos, a lot of boos.
A lot of woos, a lot of booze. Anyway, uh,
Uh,
welcome to our new podcast where we discuss things only in the way Dr. Seuss might have written about the
that's how
industry.
we should just review Star Wars now. Put some red arrows in our thumbnails and go woo or boo and solve it.
Woo or boo.
There
uh,
you go.
this leads me to the final question I wanted to ask
Mm,
about this story is, we do have the 4 Lucasfilm officially announced films,
mm.
and others in possible development like this one. I know people have discussed this for a long time, so I want to revisit it with you, Ken. How would you feel about a Star Wars film that was streaming only, or even a hybrid of like, hey, we're not
Mhm.
trying to break the box office. It's in limited release for one weekend, and then it's got a streaming premiere the next week. How would you feel about a film like that that's like pitched to be like, we're not trying to make this the next big blockbuster. We just want to tell a fun Star Wars story.
I have to be honest and say I think I'd actually be completely fine with it. I do want Star Wars back in the theaters. I can't wait. I don't go to a lot of movies, but I'll be there.
Hmm.
It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. I don't know how long the current structure of streaming will be. I don't have any insights, any thoughts. I'm not an expert, but it's just like it's a drastically and rapidly changing arena right now. But this idea works for me. It works if I can get some of these projects up and going and out. Like we still have the Lando movie / show out there somewhere.
Right.
I would love to see it. I want to see it. And if putting it streaming helps it happen, then I'm on board. I think there's a bigger industry conversation. There's all those things, and you can go on Threads and Blue Sky and X, and you can get involved in a wonderful amount of discourse over the theater experience and the cost and all this stuff. But I as much as I want to say no, Star Wars belongs in the theater. Sometimes I've enjoyed the idea of sitting at home in my sweatpants watching Star Wars and
Hmm.
watching new Star Wars under those circumstances. So I could get behind this idea again, especially if it makes these things happen faster.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd be thrilled as an audience member. I think in a way that I am concerned, like many people, about just like, yeah, you gotta give Star Wars a little bit of room to breathe. And I think if
Mm-hmm.
there's only one MCU film is successful, that it's built up, it's different, people are excited about it, it changes the conversation about the MCU. I think that could have some effect on Star Wars. But I would just love to have the studio be able to set the stakes and say,
Mm-hmm.
this one isn't for all the marbles. This one's maybe a little bit more inside baseball. So it's for, Star Wars fans. We don't need to convert everybody's grandparent. We're not trying to sell a million toys, kind of thing. I think the biggest challenge for that for me is the budget.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create a smaller scale, fun Star Wars story? Because I think after now years of the Disney Plus shows, there is a reality that even though they look phenomenal, they look bonkers compared to, the Battle for Endor when we were kids of what
Yeah.
Star Wars on
Yeah.
television was capable of. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they do look smaller scale.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the financial story?
Yeah.
I for one would be happy if it was like, hey, you know what? Give me a live action Star Wars murder mystery where half of it takes place in a haunted Sith castle. That's a real set. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
care. That'd be cool. Set
Yeah.
a lower scale and a lower budget and do it as a one-off story. I'd be thrilled, but I also recognize that I might be very, very alone in that.
Mm. Mm. Look, I've I've been perhaps too vocal in the past to how some of the stuff doesn't always jive with me. And but you're right. Like go back to the shows I grew up with as a kid. Airwolf was the best because they had a real helicopter. That's about it, right? That's about it in terms of scale. I grew up loving Gilligan's Island. CBS Studios was the island. Like, it is sometimes I think I myself am unfair with the standards that other shows in the past have set, including Star Wars, and the fact that George had always said Star Wars on TV could be a problem because it's not going to look like or feel like some of the movies. And I don't have the exact quotes, and I don't even George has the exact quotes, but there's that idea has been out there before as they put together that 2010 Underworld show. That 2010 era. But I'm with you. The budget, how it will look, how it will feel. But I think, again, being able to just get a new story in this way, I think it would be exciting and it would work.
Yeah. I'm excited for whatever this idea is. I think it is sign that it is moving forward with the writer attached. Writer has a great relationship with the directors. And I know there are a lot of people who are really clamoring for this film, so I really hope it happens. Any other thoughts from you, Ken, before we take a quick break?
I hope it happens too.
All right. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment. All right. We have returned to continue our breaking news episode. Well, we have broken all the news, at least all the news that we can cover on a shorter episode. There's a lot of the other news this week, Ken, was like, big news. There's not much news. Like that Star Wars is going to be at San Diego Comic-Con with the publishing panel and a video game panel that Patton Oswalt's hosting. That was the biggest news to me. That was the most exciting part of the news, and more stuff with the video game Outlaws. We decided to cover that as it comes out, all that. But we also want to take this opportunity to take a question from one of our patrons on Patreon. We are still celebrating the season of the dark side. I'm opening up a lot of those red cream Oreos here in the Acolyte era. So this question is a dark side question that comes to us from our patron, Elias. Elias says, hello, I have a multi-part question about name changes in Star Wars. Why do Sith and Dark Force users get new names? I personally liked it better way back when there was only one Darth, and his name was the uber cool Darth Vader. All the other Darths that came along seemed to cheapen the original impact that name had. I do like the musicality of the name Kylo Ren, however, but I don't see the point in them changing their names, especially if they still go by both names, like Count Dooku. And if baddies get new names, why don't Jedi get similarly anointed with a new name when they join the Order or become full Jedi? Finally, I'd like to know what name you all would take on if you were to have either a Sith or Jedi name. All right, Ken. This might seem like a simple question, but I have lots of thoughts. Where do you start with this?
I start with kind of what Elias is talking about of how, hey, back in the day, it was just like Darth Vader. And for a while, we thought his name was Darth. We're looking at you, Kenobi. And I love when that was kind of addressed in a way in the Kenobi series. And it's also, he's talking about names, but also the idea, the color scheme remains the same, but masks too. The idea that if you're a Sith or dark side user and you get a mask, that's itself is not what was in the films. Darth Vader needed a mask to stay alive. Palpatine, again, we could get in the mask. The argument is his mask. Which is it, Sheev or is it the Emperor? Which one's his real face? Maul, Dooku, Grievous, not a Sith, but I guess you could say a mask. But the masks were to me legends and expanded stuff like that, and I love it. I want to be clear, I love it. I love that kind of became a thing, just like Darth kind of became a thing. I very rarely refer to the Emperor as Darth Sidious. In fact, when people say it, or even Luke Skywalker, Last Jedi, I have a moment of like, wait, who now? Oh, that's right, Emperor. That's right. She was named Count Dooku. I very rarely say Darth Tyrannus, but I just like. I'm starting with the idea of like, I like how it kind of that almost came out of the fans seemed to react well to that. The name. Let's keep doing it. Let's give everyone a name. Let's kind of build out this Sith structure here.
Yeah, and I think part of it is. I do think of him as Darth Sidious. Sheev is just so much fun to say.
Yeah.
Same thing with Dooku. Yeah, I think I always love it when patrons let us know where they're coming from in
Mm-hmm.
the questions, and I understand you spend a good long time with Darth Vader. That's his name.
Right.
I remember having conversations with my brother about like, can you imagine any other human being as good as George Lucas at coming up with cool names? Darth Vader and Boba Fett just
Yeah.
sounded so cool. I loved the name Darth Vader. I always will love the name Darth Vader. I grew up thinking it was a name.
Mm-hmm.
Then one of my aunts got remarried to somebody named like Garth Bader, and for the first time, I was like, "Is that his name?" Like, how
Uh,
does Darth Vader sound so cool and Garth Bader sounds a little dopey to my childhood ears?
yeah, it's the
Um,
non-union equivalent. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have Darth Vader at home. It's Garth Bader. Anyway, I remember, and I want to ask you about this. I can't remember at what moment in the build up to Phantom Menace that that I first heard Darth Maul and the dime drop that it's a title, it's an honorific, it's not
Mm-hmm.
his
Mm-hmm.
first name. I remember
True.
like
True.
flinching and then going,
Mm-hmm.
wait, no, that's cool. That was my emotional response. I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
being like, yeah, because we'd already been through the special edition conflict of 1997, where many people got together to rail against various changes, the most famous
Yeah.
being
Oh.
Han shot first. Uh,
Mm. Mm.
but I remember for having just a second of like, am I mad about this? And then being like, no, actually, I quite like
Yeah.
it. That's really cool. It's world building. It connects
Mm-hmm.
Vader to a tradition, and it almost adds more mystery even to like, well, what's this title about? What does it mean? How is it handed down? All that kind of stuff. Did you
Mm.
go through any emotional crisis on? Oh, it's not his first name;
No.
it's a title.
No, but it's very. I think one of the overlooked aspects of the Phantom Menace and how it related to our generation, we touch upon it here, but I don't think it's discussed often and at large, and I think it's lost on the younger generations. Is those
Yeah.
kind of world building things that were drastically changing some of the things we knew?
Mm-hmm.
Again, like people make the jokes, but all the Jedi wear robes of paupers, of farmers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a Jedi thing. The Padawan, the braids, all those kind of things, and whether or not they had started to pop up in some of the novels and everything, I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even remember. It just was seen on screen, and Maul was part of that, but I didn't have any. I just kind of slid right into it, which to me is a testament of how nice it works. It
Mm-hmm.
just was like, oh, got it. It's a system. It's a structure. Darth Vader was always the Lord of the Sith. We heard
Mm-hmm.
that. We heard that, and we read that in a book or some magazine in 80 or 81, whatever it was. So like
Trading cards for me.
trading cards. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of the promotional book in 77. I think is when
Yeah.
I got it from. But yeah, so I didn't have. I had pauses on other things. That's what they wear. Oh, that's what they do. Oh, they have a Padawan learner. Okay, but it was like, oh yeah, Darth Maul. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the rule of two is always two. There are all that kind of stuff. Said in Phantom Menace, it just kind of helped establish it for me, and I liked it enough, and I just went with it there.
Yeah, I think I really liked both the Jedi and the Sith getting all of this. Like, oh, there's this definition. They do things
Mm-hmm.
differently. There's a philosophy to it. Even though I bumped on some of it at the time, and now it's amazing to think that some of that stuff was new to us in 1999.
Yeah, right. It's funny to think.
Yeah. So going. So Elias, thank you for sharing your thoughts, and it's always fun to compare and contrast to people who have had similar life experiences in terms of our time relationship to Star Wars, what we bumped on and what we
Mm.
didn't. But the Darth train is here; it's chugging along, and nothing nothing we can do about that. Um,
Choo
so
choo.
let's get to the heart of Elias's question about the name change. I think I kind of love the whole Sith name thing
Mm-hmm.
because I think they changed their names to reflect what they claim is their true identity. I
Mm-hmm.
think, as we've heard from various Sith manipulations, from Sheev to Chimere and back again, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the Sith argument, particularly when they're trying to seduce an apprentice,
Mm-hmm.
is that the apprentice, the person who has not yet fully embraced Sith ideology, you're being held back You're being lied to. Using your dark powers is freedom. And as a part of that manipulation, a part of that lie is like, you didn't even choose your name. It was
Mm-hmm.
assigned to you. It's the name that society demands that you are known as, Dooku or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is your true name, your title, which gives you identity. You're part of a lineage. You This is a name that strikes fear in
Mm-hmm.
your power. It is freedom. It is your truth. I think the name means all that, and I think I made a noise in the theater when Luke said Darth Sidious,
Mm-hmm.
partially just because it was sort of like, yeah, we're not afraid to touch the prequels, but also it's like, I think that's the way Luke would think about it. Of
Right.
Palpatine was a mask. Palpatine was the lie to the galaxy. His true identity was Darth Sidious. How do
Yeah.
you feel about all that?
Yeah, I like it as a theme. I like it as the only real world example I can think is when you become Pope. So I don't want to comment on the Vatican too much or intertwine dark side and the Vatican, but the idea of you become something else, you ascend to this title, and the idea that that it is given to you by someone else. Anakin wasn't like, I have some ideas. It was just simply henceforth. You thought you had freedom, but now your identity has been chosen by another person, right? And it's becomes this for Anakin, literally this prison that he's locked into once the mask is put on. So it's that illusion, like you were touching upon there, and it's also just kind of fun, and it's part of that Star Wars fun for me, and just the idea that. I like that we'll get it to the Jedi side. I like that the Jedi kind of don't have this as much, whereas the Sith, they're like, erase everything. You're something else. Your true self, like you're saying, it's a lie. It has meaning, and it's also, it's part of you're just the next in a line of a constant murder, life, death circle.
Yeah, yeah.
Goes
I
on and
love
on
you're
and on.
saying, because I think it's a perfect illustration of the manipulation and the lie to
Mm-hmm.
say, this name that society demands you have is a mask. Be free. Be a Sith.
Yeah.
Okay, next up in the list is Vader.
Yeah.
So I'm assigning you the name,
Yeah.
and yeah, people, we can discuss whether there should have been more reason behind Darth Vader. I don't know. I kind of feel like if Sheev had a long monologue about why the Sith name Vader, I think we would have been having the same sort of debates about, learning about how and why Solo
Mm.
got his name. Anyway, side conversation to that one.
Yeah.
But I love that and I think there's some really great explicit stuff about this in that comic book series I talk about all the time, The Rise of Kylo Ren by Charles Soule.
Mm-hmm.
Where we get great details where Ben Solo is being slowly seduced by, he thinks, a relationship with Snoke. We know Snoke is being used as a puppet of some kind by Palpatine. That his name is another thing that feels like I'm supposed to live up to this legacy of this great Jedi that I never even met, long gone before I was born, and I never really wanted a name. And it's a great, like, very real moment where Snoke is like, well, what's your true name? What name would you want? And he says something pretty explicit along those lines. I always thought the name Kylo was cool.
Yeah.
He doesn't literally say cool, but it's that whole vibe of like,
Yeah.
I literally had between 9th and 10th grade, I was like, I want my nickname to be Leo, and I'm going to try to get people to call me Leo because I thought it sounded cooler. It didn't work,
amazing.
but it was really that sort of like, hey, everybody, this summer I became goth, and I demand that you call me Leo now. It has a little bit of that sort of that vibe of being tempted toward, I've been held back, so I'm going to smash stuff and take on a cool name. Is really there in the sad manipulation of Ben rejecting the name that was forced upon him and choosing a cool name.
Yeah. Scribble it on his notebook. Kylo. Isn't it
Yeah.
cool? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of joking about it, but I also feel like it is really cool because I think it is a manipulation of what we talked about of alleged freedom, and it's not. And to Elias's other point about like, I totally understand being like, well, we almost never hear Darth Tyrannus. Why does he need that name? Everybody calls him Count Dooku.
Right.
But for me, that's entirely that's one of those things where we, the audience, are used to calling him Count Dooku because in the story, he is using that name because he doesn't want to reveal that he's a Sith in charge of the Separatists. It would kind of ruin the whole game if he was like,
yeah,
yes, we have legitimate political grievances, and everybody, I got a new name. It's Darth Tyrannus.
For no reason. No reason.
Yeah, no reason. It's just a good name. Just a good name. I just
like it. Yeah.
Found some birth records on Sereno. Turns out my real name is Darth Tyrannus.
Yeah.
Just a coincidence. I think in his heart of hearts, he thinks like, yes, I am a Sith. I'm Darth Tyrannus. But we as the audience hear him use that name because it's a manipulation. It's how Yoda knows him. It's how Obi-Wan knows him and all that. So that's my thought on that. Any thoughts about how little we hear names like Darth Tyrannus?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just habit. It's just the audience. If we had referred to him more like that, I've always said Dooku, always referred to him as Dooku, never say Tyrannus. So, and I think for a long time, I think it's easier to refer to Vader as Anakin now. But I even knowing that that's who he was, Vader would be how I referred to him until well into the Clone Wars, right? When we just got to know that other side of him. I mean, post prequels, it was still Vader to me. But so it's just how habits form outside of the stories.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of good storytelling to be had with Dooku of like how much his motivation to follow the dark side was attached to reclaiming his title and his legacy and his royalty. So maybe he is like, I'm both.
Both. Yeah.
Either one's good. So let's get to the Jedi part of it. Why do you feel that Jedi don't do any sort of name altering ceremony?
As much as they do, want you to kind of leave behind all those things, as we've seen play out, when they think maybe you can't, maybe they have an issue with it, looking at Anakin, looking at Osha. As much as they want to, you're part of this family now, I think there's something about, but that's who you are. It's just a move forward. It's a letting go, but it's not a forgetting. So it's still Obi-Wan Kenobi. And that might mean that, the family that we know of now is out there having, Kenobi and Sons, carpentry on Planet Stoojon, and that it's a
it's so sad, making me think of Kenobi's dad having to change the name of his sign, crossing out one of the S's. It's just Kenobi. It was going to be Kenobi and Sons. Now it's just Kenobi and Son.
And he could go back. Kenobi could go back. You meant Dooku goes back, but you choose not to. You choose to be who you are in a new place, in a new surrounding with a new family, and that could be part of it as well. I do feel there's, you don't, the family names aren't used as much, or Master Obi-Wan versus Master Kenobi. How many times those are used and all those kind of things. I still think there's not a change, there's not an official change, but Jedi Master Douglas is how you refer to him, not his full name, but you know what I mean. But I still think the Jedi acknowledge and want to always acknowledge who you were, and that's part of what this is, letting go.
Yeah, there is the Jedi Master Douglas Sunvale, which if I were in the order, I would use Sunvale rather than.
Oh yeah, that's a
Master
Leo
Doug.
waiting to happen.
Yep. It's a Leo waiting to happen. I really do feel like it is symbolic of how the Jedi and the Sith are different. I think the Jedi are asking you to be able to let go of your attachment to specific loved ones. But I don't think there's anything in Jedi storytelling that's like, you're a Togruta. You come from this culture with this beliefs. That's a part of who you are. That's, we see Wookiees incorporate part of their culture into their blades. The way that, we see tree bark from bark, the tree wooden handle in lightsabers and all sorts of different elements of culture. So I think there's not all that's being asked is you need to be able to let go of the past, but you can still be who you are. You're from this place. You're from this culture. That's the name that your family of origin gave you. There's no reason for us to change it. What we will measure, how your name will change, is by your choices and your progress. And the name changes that matter to us is Padawan, Knight, Master, that reflect the choices you make and the growth that you make. But, who you are, we don't need to change that, and you can embrace that. Whereas I feel like the Sith want their new recruits to have a sharp, violent disconnect from their past. Their past was a lie where the people who loved them manipulated them and used them, and they want you to actively reject your past. Whereas the Jedi are just like, you need to be able to let your family of origin go, but if you want to explore your roots and understand your culture, that's fine, versus you have to hate everything that came before. You have to hate the person you were before, and that's symbolized by changing your name.
Yeah, I could even see in a new Jedi Order, Rey going, all right, once you're established, once you're of rank, once you're maybe a knight, there's family weekends. You can go back, take a weekend. Everyone's focused on the attachment, Jedi and romance, and I think those are important things to talk about going forward. The Jedi Order, was that right? Was it wrong? It's a different way to look at it. But again, after a certain safe period of time where you feel you're ready to go back, and maybe there's a temptation to stay, and maybe that's still part of an ongoing trial because it's always about your next choice. I want family weekends in the new Jedi Order.
Yeah, and maybe that would be like a much more relaxed Jedi Order of like, have family weekend. And if you come to a time where you're like, I don't want to leave this anymore, then that's fine. You're not part of the Order anymore.
Yeah, Jedi retirement plan. Maybe that's what we
Yeah. Maybe the new Jedi Order film will be called 2 Weeks Notice. Just give Rey 2 weeks notice, and you can go back. All right, the most important part of Eliza's great question: what our Sith or Jedi name would be? My Jedi name would be, hopefully Jedi Knight Joseph Scrimshaw. I'm not going to change it, and they're not going to ask me to change it, in my opinion. So I will focus on my Darth name. How do you feel about this, Ken? Do you have a Darth name, a Jedi name?
In terms of Jedi name, I had a radio name. Well, I started with a different radio name. My program director made me take one, and I changed it. I went back to Napzok. I had a jokey name called Flying Freddy Fables at a pirate radio station, a micro-powered station I started at. So my program director at the official station I started was like, take your Ken Fables. And so I broadcast for about 6 months as Ken Fables. What the hell is that? That's not me. I'm Ken Napzok. A name that shall stand the test of time, this 20-year-old idiot said. Me being the idiot. So that's that. That's me on the Jedi side. But on the Darth side, the Sith side, I always joke about how curmudgeonly and grumpy I am, and you don't want to be called Darth Grumpy. So I went to dictionary.com, went to the Thithorith.com, and I'm going to be called Darth Fractious.
Oh, nice. I thought you were just going to go with straight Darth Grumpus.
Well, I was looking at that, and that's why I checked, so what are the words out there? What are the cinnamons? Cinnamon? Thithorith? Cinnamons.
I'm Ken Fables, everybody. Yeah. That's so funny because Fables is Napzok is like 10 million times better. Like, if my real name was Fables and I was looking for a fake name, I would take Napzok way over Fables.
I'd put some cinnamon on it.
Name.
Yeah, no, and I got my Ukrainian hat on today because I'm feeling my grandma and grandpa's side today. So I wanted to be who I was, but Darth Fractious, he's very grumpy.
I love it. I'm always tempted by Darth Squirrel, the very moving Sith who suddenly focuses on one specific thing. The long-standing joke, Darth Awesome. My friends and I always we put it in a comedy sketch at a convention. That would have been very funny if that was the name that Darth Sidious pulled out. And you shall be known henceforth as Darth Awesome. It's a silly joke that a million people have made, and it still entertains me.
Yes.
But I have a favorite word that I think has come up. It was a word that one of my teachers said, here's a really fun word that you'll only encounter every once in a while. It was just kind of like a random fun thing of like, if you ever just want to have a fun, weird word to pull out as a party trick. And he wrote it on the board and underlined it, and it was crepuscular, which means of the twilight.
Yeah.
So it's got a good Sith meaning of, oh, the light is fading and we're being plunged into night. So I would be known as Darth Crepuscular.
Crepuscular. Oh, love that. Fractious and crepuscular.
And I think we showed up, back when there were many Siths, and we were like, yeah, we are Darth Fractious and Darth Crepuscular. Probably just me. All the other Darths would probably just yell, nerds!
No! Get away.
Who's got a thesaurus holocron? I guess it's
Yeah.
Darth Fractious and Darth Crepuscular.
Thesaurus. I can say it now. Thesaurus.
It's a really cruel one, especially when it's a word about words.
Yeah, like I've said before, I admit it. I do flip some letters in my mind a little bit, but I haven't had any coffee today, so thesaurus and cinnamon are where I'm going to land.
Yep, it happens to all of us, even when we're younger than 81. It happens to all of us. Oh no, I broke and said a minorly political thing, which means we need to wrap up. Ken, do you want to take us home?
I do want to take us home. I want to get you on out of here. Leave it on a jet plane. You're going to have a great trip. Everybody, we're ForceCenter. You can find us on social media at ForceCenter Pod. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. Instagram, YouTube, subscribe over there as we've been talking about. Thanks again to Big Lou. Big Lou's Clubhouse has been helping us get some clips out on our Acolyte show. It's been wonderful. And we've got some new followers because of that. We've also got some new enemies because of that, because that's how shorts work in the YouTube world. You can get merch at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. The Thorth. And also, you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. On that Patreon page, you have our Rise of Skywalker watch-along commentary video. You can also just swing by the Patreon shop and pick it up a la carte if that's how you want to take that in. It's out there, and it was a lot of fun to do. Follow me at Ken Napzok, or go to kennapzok.com for updated show dates and information. Going to be down San Diego Comic-Con at the American Comedy Company on Thursday, July 25th with Mark Ellis and friends. And then on August 16th, I'm part of your wonderful birthday celebration, the variety show, coming soon. And I'm sure you'll tell us some more right now.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. It's called Horror Years Old. I'm turning a big birthday on Saturday, August 17th. So the night before, I'm celebrating with a big comedy variety show that's going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to be about aging and embracing it. I'm going to be doing some stand-up, so is Ken. A lot of other great people on the show. I'm going to be showing one of my short films, all sorts of fun stuff. And you can attend live in person in Los Angeles at the Lyric Hyperion, or it's going to be live streamed, so you can watch it anywhere that you can get the internet. And link to tickets of either kind, in person or online, it's on my website, josephscrimshaw.com. A lot more is coming in terms of film stuff, and I'm sure a lot more shows for Ken, and maybe a show here or there for myself as I concentrate on film stuff. But thank you all for supporting ForceCenter and supporting some of the other adventures we are involved in right now. That is it. The news has broken.